Past the Curve, where we discover hope, meaning, and friendship through those unexpected curves in life. And I'm Net. Today's topic, the outsiders. Ever feel like an outsider? I know I sure have. And I can think of a particular time when I was a child and we moved from the big city to the country, and I felt like an outsider. I had to start a new school. So on that very first day, I wanted to fit in. I picked out what I thought would be the perfect outfit to wear. I walked into school on that first day and I have on my blue jean skirt and my clogs. And when I walk in and see everyone else, they have on blue jeans and cowboy boots. I don't even think I owned a pair of blue jeans, much less cowboy boots. And I definitely felt like an outsider. At recess, I went up to two girls, asked if I could play with them, and I was told no. That got me thinking, does the Bible give an example of what it's like to be an outsider? Does the Bible say, how did Jesus treat outsiders? And sure enough, there's a story in the Bible that speaks to that. And it's in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 to 6. That's what we're going to look at today. So Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 6 says, Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was, but because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. That story brings a smile to me. So first, let me kind of give you a little background of who Zacchaeus was. It says that he was the tax collector. Not only a tax collector, but the chief tax collector. And in those days, tax collectors were hated. So he would have been considered an outsider. But he was curious about who this Jesus was. I'm sure he had heard of him. And since there was such a large crowd and he was short, he couldn't see him, he decides to run ahead of the crowd and climb up a tree to get a good view of who Jesus was. So he waits there. And as Jesus approaches that spot, Jesus looks up and sees Zacchaeus. And when Jesus sees him, he not only calls him, he calls him by name to come on down immediately. That brings a smile to me because here it is Zacchaeus who feels like it is an outsider in society, probably shunned from a lot of people, not accepted and rejected by a lot of people in that day, that Jesus notices him and calls him down. And immediately down, and Zacchaeus goes. And then Zacchaeus welcomes Jesus. That's a great example of what Jesus is calling all of us. He's calling, you may feel like you're on the outside. You've been rejected and shunned by everyone around you. But Jesus sees you. He sees the lengths you go and what you're doing to outreach to him. And he's calling you down to come on down, see who he is, and to welcome him gladly. See, Jesus calls each and every one of us, but we have a decision to make to accept him or not. And that was the same decision Zacchaeus had to do, right? Zacchaeus was curious about him. He was curious about who this Jesus was, curious enough to climb a tree. But he could have stayed in that tree. But when Jesus called him to come down immediately, he did. He not only came down, but it says that Zacchaeus welcomed Jesus. That's what Jesus is telling all of us. He's calling each and every one of us down to welcome him. You know, one of the great things I heard recently about offering hospitality to someone is making outsiders feel like insiders. And that's what Jesus does. He says, hey, you don't have to be on the outside. You don't have to be up in a tree. I'm calling you down to come on and be an insider. So I encourage you today, listen to Jesus calling you down and come down immediately and welcome him gladly. And because he wants you to not be an outsider, he wants you to be an insider. Thanks for letting me share.